Hello everyone, welcome back to Triad Travelogues. I'm Richard, and I'm coming at you today from the outskirts of Shanghai to talk to you a little bit about why I chose to come to China. Now, I've been living in Shanghai, China for about 2 years. I've been in Asia for 3 years. My first year on this continent, I spent in Kathmandu, Nepal, where I was working as a volunteer at an orphanage in a little village called Fatung. Now, prior to that, I was living in Baltimore, Maryland, and I was working as a special education paraprofessional. I was basically like a teacher's assistant, and I worked with special needs children for about 7 years. Now, after I went through a really bad breakup with a girl that I was engaged to. I was with her for 5 years, and I sort of was in a bad place. I was really depressed, and I guess something just sort of shifted in my mind, and I started thinking about, you know, what I was doing with my life. You know, I mean, I don't have any problem with the kind of work that I was doing. I enjoyed teaching. I enjoyed working with special needs kids. It was a very fulfilling kind of job that I had. I liked it a lot. But at the same time, I would wake up every morning in this just sort of pit of despair, because this life that I had sort of imagined and built up in my head had kind of just fallen apart. I mean, it fell apart over a period of several years. But, you know, I was at the point of my life, you know, I was 30 years old. I'm 34 now. But at the time I was 20, I was like 29, 30. And I would wake up every day and I would think to myself, is this all there really is to life? You know, like, there's got to be more to life than this. Getting up, going to work, working all day, coming home, you know, doing the same thing every day. And in my early 20s, I was a very adventurous person, to the point of recklessness. I was very chaotic, and, you know, I had a lot of problems in my 20s, but at least I was having fun in my life, you know. I never kept a job for more than a year. I never really kept the same group of friends for more than a year. I never kept the same living space for more than a year or a couple of years. I was just a very chaotic person. I moved around a lot. I wanted to experience everything, you know. Most of my 20s I lived in Baltimore, Maryland. And I was crazy. I was a crazy person. I was the kind of person that other people would say, that guy is dangerous. Stay away from that guy. Not because I'm violent. I was never violent. I would never hurt anyone. But just because I was reckless. I was willing to do anything if it meant having an adventure, if it meant having a story to tell, or something to write about, something to talk about, or just something to experience. And, you know, as my 20s sort of went on, you know, when I got a little bit older, in my mid-20s, I met a girl that I eventually moved in with and was engaged to. And I guess everything kind of slowed down, and I had this idea that I needed to start being responsible. That's not to say that I succeeded in being responsible, but I thought, you know, I needed to be a responsible person. I needed to get a job, you know, maybe start working on a career, stop jumping around so much, you know, be sober more often. And so I did that, you know. I took some classes, and I studied to become a paraprofessional in special education, and I started working in the public schools. Working in the public schools for a year or two, and then I got some private jobs doing tutoring, working with kids in their homes. And eventually I started working for a private school that specialized in children with severe emotional disabilities. And I enjoyed it. I liked doing that. I was good at it. You know, I've got my own sort of mental problems, and I related to these kids. You know, I felt like we were on the same level. I'm not sure if that's a good thing in terms of professional, being objective on a professional level, and when it comes to education, but you know, it is what it is, and it was a job that I had that I enjoyed, but something was missing, you know. And I know now, looking back, that that thing that was missing was that sense of adventure that my early 20s sort of, you know, in my early 20s, I was just an adventurous person. I was willing to do anything. You know, I mean, adventurous to a fault, you know. And, you know, as I neared toward 30, my relationship with my fiance started to fall apart. And, you know, it wasn't just my fault. You know, I was a crazy person and she was a crazy person, and we were two crazy people that, you know, were crazy together. And I don't know if you've ever known two really crazy, emotionally disturbed people in a relationship, but it makes for just like the entity of the crazy couple is like something far more crazy than either of them. You know, it's like a super crazy thing. You know, the relationship itself becomes this creature of craziness. And so I was just in a crazy relationship, and I was this person that was stuck in between wanting to experience adventures, wanting to have that sort of, I yearn for that chaotic life of my early 20s, but also trying to maintain some degree of responsibility and consistency in my life. You know, because I thought that's what you're supposed to do, right? That's what you're supposed to do. You know, in the United States of America, when you get older, you settle down and you get married and you have a family, and, you know, you climb the corporate ladder or whatever. You become responsible. You put the childish things away. And for me, those childish things were all the trouble that I got into when I was in my 20s, you know? Drinking a lot and smoking a lot and breaking into abandoned buildings and, you know, bothering people, being a nuisance, just getting into things, having adventures, you know, being my own person. And yeah, some of those things aren't good things. Some of those things are very bad things, you know, but hey, that's who I was, you know, in my 20s, and it was fun. I enjoyed it. So, you know, the relationship fell apart. It wasn't anybody's fault. It was just both of us. We were young, and, you know, we weren't compatible. We fought all the time. And eventually she moved out of the apartment, and I just went on sort of a soul-searching thing, a campaign of searching for my spirit. You know, what have I lost? Where am I in this whole thing? You know, I spent all of this time trying to build up this life that I thought I was supposed to have, that other people always, when I was growing up, that adults tell you that you're supposed to have. You know, you're supposed to do this. It doesn't matter if you like it or not. You just have to do it. That's called being an adult. Being an adult sucks. You gotta be responsible. And so I just decided that I didn't have to do that. I didn't have to be an adult. I didn't have to be responsible. I just wanted to have fun. You know what I mean? I wanted to have adventures. And I reasoned that the greatest adventure that I could possibly have would be to embark on a decade-long travel experience that saw me on every continent and every country, traveling around with a backpack on my back, you know, maybe like very little money. I'd be a vagabond, a homeless man, traveling the globe, searching for my next meal, trying to find interesting people to hang out with, you know? That was my, you know, I'd never been outside the United States at that point, and other than, I went to Cancun, Mexico once when I was like 12, but I don't think that really counts. And so, I really just decided I'm gonna do this. I saved up money for 2 years. I found a program that places volunteers in different countries around the world. I chose to go to Kathmandu, Nepal, and volunteer at an orphanage for a year. And I reasoned that would be like my first year of travels, you know? It would help me to sort of, I don't know, to reset this mentality of being responsible and being an adult and, you know, doing all the things that people always told me to do my whole life. You know, it was like a way to rebel against the system of oppression. You know, people telling me what to do, telling me how to live my life. So I sold all of my things. I gave away the things that remained. I quit my jobs. Had a bunch of jobs at that point. I quit all my jobs. I said goodbye to everybody. And I got on an airplane and I went to Kathmandu, Nepal. Now keep in mind, it took me 2 years to save $10,000. That's how poor I was working as a teacher in the United States. 2 years to save 10,000 US dollars. Anyway, got a guy staring at me. People love to stare here. So I got on a plane, went to Kathmandu. I lived at an orphanage for the better part of a year, and it was a miserable experience, and it broke me. It broke me emotionally, it broke me intellectually, it broke me spiritually. It was, you know, I look back on it now as like one of those experiences that it was very, very good for me, but it hurt, you know? And I think I was involved with, well, volunteerism. And at the time, I thought I was going to go to Kathmandu and help little kids. But the reality is that I was just involved with this really exploitative industry that sort of makes profits from people's pity. Now that is the subject to get into at another point. I'm writing a book about my experiences in Nepal. But that sort of little backstory is kind of, it's necessary for you to understand why I'm in China now. So anyway, after my time in Nepal, I flew to my hometown in Dallas, Texas. Sorry about the wind, guys. Sorry about the wind. I could get closer to the camera, you can hear me better. You can see my beautiful face better. So I flew to Dallas, Texas, and I stayed with my parents for several months, and I was miserable. I had no money. I had been broken in every way possible. I've seen things in Nepal. I saw some really bad things. And I just sort of didn't know how to process everything that had happened to me there, and everything that I saw happen to other people there. And I had a lot of guilt that was associated with the fact that I paid this money to be involved with a really exploitative, just terrible industry. And the company that I used to go to Nepal with was, in my opinion, they're a bad company, they're bad people. And so I spent several months in a bedroom in my parents' house, pretty much just sleeping, being miserable. And you know, at some point my mom was like, you know, you gotta get out of this rut, you know, you can't just stay here. And you know, to me it was like when Nepal was finished, it was like the termination of my travels. You know, I had failed in every way. I had failed to be a good volunteer. I failed to help the kids. I failed to enlighten myself. I was in a much worse place when I got back from Nepal than when I left. And so I figured, well, I gotta work, you know. And so what I did was I just went online and I looked up, you know, jobs in Asia. Trying to find a job in Asia. Not like I have any skills or anything. I'm not a particularly like motivated person when it comes to physical activity, you know. But I was willing to do anything, man. I would have harvested rice at that point, you know. I just needed to get out of the house. I needed money. I needed a life. I needed to get my life back together. I was 31 years old, 32 actually. And I was a mess. And so finally I found out about ESL, you know, teaching English as a second language in China. And I understand that well, I know now that I've been doing this for 2 years, that this industry is ridiculous. I mean, it's ridiculous for so many reasons that I can't really get into that now. That's like the subject for a series of videos about the absurdities of ESL in China. But at the time I was like, hey, you know, the money's not bad. It's better than teaching, better money than a real teachers make in the United States. So I found a job in Shanghai, China. And a month later, after I got my visa sorted out, I came to Shanghai. And here I am. I'm in China now. I'm about to go work at my ESL job right now. But the point of this video, and the thing that I really wanted to hammer in, is that I'm 34 years old. And right now, I have everything that I've ever wanted in my life. I mean, I really do. 3 months after I got to China, I met the love of my life, a Chinese woman, and we were married, I want to say 5 months later, and then like a year after that, we had a child. So now I have a daughter who is almost 3 months old. I have a stable job. I'm making more money here than I was making teaching as a paraprofessional in the United States. I'm making more money now than I would if I was a real, actual certified teacher in the United States. And I think it's really important. Oh, and I have a nice apartment, you know? Now, I don't want to teach ESL forever, you know. ESL is a whole different story. But I have everything that a guy could want. I have a beautiful wife. I have a beautiful daughter. I have, you know, multiple sources of income. I have prospects, you know? I have hope. And I didn't have that before. And you know, maybe you would say something different. You would say, oh, that guy sucks or whatever. But in my opinion, I'm doing great. I'm happy. You know, I don't love China, but I don't hate China either. You know, China's got good things and China has bad things. But the point is that before I left for China, I had so many people telling me not to go. So many people in my family and my friends and people who are no longer my friends, all telling me, don't do this, don't go to China. Don't continue this ridiculous travel thing. You need to stay here. You need to find a good job in the United States and settle down. You know, and then you can find a wife, and then you can have babies, and you can climb the corporate ladder and do all that nonsense, you know? So many people, you know, even people that were telling me like, China's so dangerous. Don't go to China, they're communist. You know? You'll get killed. But seriously, I lived in Baltimore, Maryland for 10 years. And I've lived in areas in Baltimore, Maryland, where I couldn't even go outside at 2 o'clock in the morning and walk around. Shanghai, China is way safer than Baltimore, Maryland. Now, I mean, in Shanghai, you're not gonna get shot. I mean, nobody has guns. People really aren't very violent. I never feel not safe. Except for when I cross the street. People drive like complete lunatics here and they might kill you with their cars, but they wouldn't do it intentionally. Like in Baltimore, where people would just shoot you just because, you know, they're coming off a crack and they don't feel good and they want your money or whatever. So many people told me, no, you're 34 years old. Well, I was 32 at the time. You're 32 years old. You can't keep living like this. Life is not an adventure. Life is boring. You need to accept that. You know, stop it with this traveling nonsense. And you know what? I didn't listen to those people. I went ahead and I left. I left the States because I was miserable. I was in a bad place. I left the States because I sensed that there was more to life. You know, I left the States because my spirit of adventure was not going to be held down by the expectations of people who have never even left their home state. People who have never left Texas, or people who have never left Maryland, or the only traveling they've done is to drive to the ocean, which is 2 hours away. Why would I let those people squash my dreams? You know, I want to travel. I want to have fun. I want to have an experience. I want to have adventures. I'm too young to just settle down and die. And you know what? In a way, in a way, I sort of did settle down, didn't I? I met a woman, we got married, we had a baby. I mean, I'm not planning on staying in China, but what I am planning on doing is adding 1 extra year to that 10 years of travel that I originally envisioned. Because I like the number 11 for a lot of different reasons. That's the subject for another video as well. But I'm gonna travel for 11 years. I'm gonna keep doing this. I'm not gonna stay in Shanghai, China, just like I didn't stay in Nepal. You know, I'm just passing through. I'm having a good time. I'm saving money. I've collected some great things like a wife and a baby. You know, I'm having an adventure. I'm having the time of my life. And I never would have expected 2 years ago, in the miserable state that I was in, that I could have achieved so much. And it's not a monetary achievement. It's not an achievement that you could quantify with numbers or with mathematics or with graphs or with statistics. It's just an achievement that is emotional and spiritual, and it is a human thing. It's a human experience. It's been a human achievement. I've made connections. You know, I've put myself back together. I'm way better than I was then. 2 years ago, you know? I've achieved more emotionally and intellectually in 2 years than I did in my whole 32 years of existence before that. So all you people that told me, don't leave your home country, you need to get a job, you need to settle down, you need to climb the corporate ladder and stop dreaming big, stop dreaming about adventures. To all you people, screw you. You know, and I don't mean that in a way that's like, I don't hate any of you, and I don't want to create any bad blood with my family and friends, and you know who you are. But for everyone who was a naysayer, I mean, I'm having the time of my life. I'm having an adventure that far exceeds any expectation that I ever had of having an adventure. It's not just about climbing mountains or meditating in Lumbini with Buddhists or going whitewater rafting during a monsoon or visiting the Great Wall of China or getting on the Trans-Mongolian Express and going through the Gobi Desert. It isn't about all of that. No, no, no. My adventure right now is the most potent and unpredictable adventure that one could possibly have in a lifetime. Having a new wife, having a new baby, being in a new place, living a new life. And not a life that I planned, but just a life that jumped in front of me because I paved the way, because I took the road less traveled, because I brushed away all the branches and the leaves and the overgrown shrubbery, and I trekked through the unknown. I ran through, screaming my battle cry, "Urgh!" And I made it. I did well. I found myself and I found my life. And for everybody that I meet, I always tell them the same thing if we talk about travel or we talk about adventures. I always tell everyone, drop everything and travel. Travel the world, travel your mind. Get away from the mundane. Get away from the things that are familiar. Put yourself out of your comfort zone. You'll never regret it. I don't regret it, and neither will you. Whew. Thank you for watching Triad Travelogues. I'm Richard. I'll see you next time.